Hey, it's Kley. Welcome to another video. Lucy and I would like to welcome you to kind of the completion of this amp project. This is my 6AU6 Princeton. It's in a 1x12 combo cabinet, kind of loosely modeled after a 5E3 style enclosure. And I wanted to do a more thorough tone test of the amp as it is, and in its guitar cabinet enclosure combo. And before I do that, I want to run through the total specs of the build and everything and how I got to it. Let's start with the enclosure. That's most recent. I've got, this is made out of pine. I assembled it with finger joints using my router. I've got a previous video in depth on how I did that, so if you're curious about how to build your own cabinet, refer to that video. But these are just some pine boards. Now, I did reinforce these box joints with cleats on the inside, just kind of to over-engineer. I wasn't sure how stable my box joints would be. So I've got cleating going on every single inside corner. We've got a 3/4 inch piece of plywood for the front baffle, covered by this burlap material that I found at my local craft store. We've got an open back cab in the back. Now, the amp is the 6AU6 Princeton. One other update is this is actually an old belt that I'm using as the handle. The previous rubber handle was not such a good idea. It was just too stretchy. Now, for the electronics and controls, we've got a non-master preamp volume, treble bass, blackface style tone control, and then the mid-range is kind of more of a raw control. A typical mid-range maybe goes to 10K for more of a scooped Fender, 25K for more of a Marshall, and as you increase the resistance of the mid-range control, the more mid-range you're presenting, right? The higher resistance is going between the mid frequencies and ground. So as you resist their path to ground, more of them have to pass through the signal. Well, I've got a 250K mid pot, and I ran that through the Duncan tone stack calculator, and what happens is at about 1, it's more of a blackface Fender scoop. At about 3 or 4, it's more of a Marshall mid-present, and then past 5, it actually starts to defeat the entire tone stack, and the treble and bass controls begin to have less effectiveness. And at 10, the tone stack is almost entirely bypassed for more of a tweed feel. So, and you can kind of blend all the way in between. So I really enjoy the range of tones you can get to dial in the amount of mid scoop or mid push, as well as the effectiveness of the treble and bass controls. And I generally have found the most success somewhere between 2 and about 5 or 6 for kind of more of a in-between sound, which I really enjoy. We've got a fuse, pilot light, on-off switch. I'm not a believer in standby controls. From the research I've done, they don't do anything in guitar amps worth any value. Then I also do have 2 switches. One is the cathode bypass cap on the V1A of the first 12AX7. So that really has a tremendous increase in gain and overall output. And then I also have a second switch that controls the cathode bypass cap on the second gain stage of the 12AX7. But however, so when the cathode bypass capacitor is removed, it also inserts some negative feedback. So that has the effect also of removing a lot of gain, but also negative feedback helps to kind of smooth out the frequency. It is higher headroom, lower distortion, cleaner tone. So between those 2 switches, you can drastically alter the amount of preamp gain going on in the circuit to get a very high headroom, clean tone that even up at 10 will not really start to break up. Or you can turn one off, one on for more of a mixed approach, or you can turn them both on for more of a raw, more driving tone where you're going to get to about 3 or 4 and the amp will start breaking up. So I really enjoy the ability to kind of mix and match my distortion sounds there. So then for speaker, I've got a WGS ET65 12-inch speaker, and it is rear mounted. I tested a number of different speakers and found this one worked really nicely with this amp. It didn't have as much. I tried some Fender style speakers, like I've got a couple Jensens. I also tried some British style speakers. I've got a WGS Green Beret. But ultimately, I found that this one was kind of more neutral, and given that the topology of the amp is kind of mixing and matching a number of different features, this kind of fit with that as well. And so it kind of is a nice all-around amp, takes pedals really nicely, but also has some nice character on its own. And overall, I just am really happy with how the WGS is sounding in this amplifier. I think WGS speakers are excellent. So let's go ahead and get into the tone clips now and see how this bad boy sounds. Thanks.